Chapter 595. It looks like there's a limit to how much I can influence him with my sealed powers. At the rate that he's progressing, he will die early. Maybe if I find a way to weaken his soul temporarily, I will be able to have a greater influence on him. Upon muttering those words, Kevin watched as the black threads danced around the white orb and started to attack it. After striking the orb, the threads bounced back, leaving it completely undamaged. The sight caused Kevin's brows to furrow. I don't seem to have enough power to damage his soul, so I'll have to find another way. Feeling his hand pull away from the orb, Kevin felt his body take a step back. After that, he continued to stare at the orb for 2 more loops. He seemed to be paying particular attention to each and every one of the details in each loop. I see. Right before the second loop started, Kevin once again felt his hand pull toward the orb. I think I've found a way. With the fade of his words, the loop repeated and Kevin watched the same events unfold once more. It was only after Rin woke up from the coma after having fought with Everblood that Rin finally took action as Kevin felt his body move. Taking a step forward and placing his hand on the orb, Kevin softly mumbled, "Let's see if it works." Black threads sprang from the ground, covering the entire orb. After that, just as he wished, while selecting the skills from the long list of skills in the black market, Rin eventually chose a particular skill. Picking it up from one of the bookshelves, he slowly began to turn the book around. A skill that enables users to erase all emotions and act as a supreme monarch that only calculates the best option regardless of circumstance. Mumbling those words, Kevin felt the chains that were binding his body rattle wildly. Clearly, Rin was trying to pull something. But Rin didn't care as he eventually closed his eyes, stopping Kevin from seeing anything. Amidst the darkness, he was only able to hear 2 words. They rang clearly inside his head. Monarch indifference. I don't get it. What's going on? What am I seeing? Is what I'm seeing real? Amanda's mind was in a state of disarray as she watched the memories play out in front of her. It was difficult for her to comprehend what was happening. At one moment she saw Rin standing in front of a funeral mourning the death of his parents, while the next moment she saw the weather change alongside the time and seasons. Recalling the hand that reached out to grab Ren's head, Amanda knew that he was looking at his memories. There was only one problem. Ren's parents never died. He was especially sure of this. After all, she had been with them not too long ago and she had gotten quite close to them. Their death would have surely been known to her. Ren must have somehow found a way to fake his memories. That was the only conclusion that Amanda could come up with upon further thinking. How else would it explain what she was seeing? Other than this, she really couldn't think of anything else. Or so she thought. Because I killed them. Conclusion of Trial 209. Upon killing everyone that Kevin held dear, he fell into a state of emotional turmoil. Assessing the situation, I decided to terminate the loop. Based on my calculations, the possibility of him defeating the Demon King was beneath 1%. It wasn't worth continuing. Trial 210 goal: kill anyone that Kevin was close to in the previous loop before he comes in contact with them in this loop. Same goes for my family. It's better if they die early. Visit for the best no_freed_g experience. Scenes began to replay in front of her, and the confidence she had in her previous theory started to dwindle. What's going on? Even more questions began to emerge inside of her head. What she was seeing was simply too much for her to understand. The scene switched and she was now in what seemed to be a world filled with devastation and ruin. Is this the outcome that you wanted? What are you talking about? For the sake of killing him, you decided to sacrifice the whole of humanity. What's the point of killing him when there's no one left? What's the fucking point? Because I don't care. Amanda didn't understand a single thing about what was going on. Why is Kevin here? And what are they talking about? The way they talked, it just didn't make sense to Amanda. It was then that chains began to spring out of the ground before binding the body she was in. What followed after was darkness. A darkness that lasted long enough to make her mind go numb. What's that? While her mind slowly grew numb, a white orb appeared. Displayed on it was... No, that's not him. It didn't take more than a couple of seconds for Amanda to realize that whoever was in the white orb wasn't Ren. The Ren she knew behaved and carried himself differently. Nevertheless, trapped inside of the body, Amanda watched Ren's life slowly unfold before her eyes. The more she watched, the less the thoughts in her head were. It didn't take long for her mind to grow completely numb, and she stopped processing what was happening before her altogether. She didn't understand anything, nor did she want to. What she was seeing was simply too much. That was all until one specific scene started to replay in front of her. This place. Closing her eyes once, she found herself in front of a large hall. Looking around the place, she spotted herself standing in the distance. Opposite her was Elijah. Thup, thup, thup. Deep slaps resounded across the hall. Amanda couldn't feel the pain that came from the slap, but she didn't need to. She could still vividly remember this scene. How could she not? This was the scene in which she first met Ren, and it was here that he left a deep impression on her. Checkmate. Everything unfolded exactly as she remembered. Pretending to faint from the slaps, Ren woke up and killed Elijah while he was injured from an all-out attack from her. Finally killing Elijah, he walked up next to her and he knocked her out. Feeling her eyes close once more, she found herself in front of the same demon from one of the visions. His name was something along the lines of Everblood. Meeting his eyesight, he slowly bent down on one knee. "Is there anything you would like for me to do?" "Yes." Amanda felt her head nod as Ren's voice echoed. "Your task is simple. Find the matriarch of the charm tribe, Angelica von Droix, and give her a hint that I'm the one who killed her contracted Elijah." Angelica. That's correct. Before the demon could ask any more questions, Amanda suddenly found herself standing in front of the white orb. Her mind was currently in a weird state. Recalling the scenes from before, she couldn't exactly make out what was going on. What exactly is he trying to do? Everything didn't make sense to her. What she was seeing and what was happening. It didn't make sense. No, rather, she understood. She just didn't want to come to terms with what she was seeing. He just couldn't. In order for her to accept what she was seeing, she would also have to accept that her meeting with Ren was premeditated. And she? No, it's not. A strange feeling engulfed her heart. The feeling didn't last for long as her attention was soon caught by what was displayed on the white orb. "Cuckoo, it seems like nothing escapes your perception, Madam Matriarch. Or would you prefer it if I called you Angelica von Droix?" Everblood spoke while staring at a figure that Amanda was able to instantly recognize. It's her. While her complexion was pale and her hair seemed to be a mess, Amanda could never forget the demoness in front of her. She was the one who cursed her mother after all. "It seems like you have a death wish, Everblood." Standing over the opposite building, Amanda silently watched her interaction with Everblood. In her heart, she understood just how important this scene was. "Who? You better not be playing tricks on me." "Cuckoo, no need to be so aggressive. Here." Everblood threw her a black orb-like object. It appeared to be a devil's fruit. But that didn't seem to be all. "Listen here, Matriarch. I may have a clue with regards to who is responsible for your little puppy's death." Smiling widely, Everblood shook his head. Taking out a picture from out of thin air, Everblood lightly threw it in Angelica's direction. Catching the picture with her hands, Angelica glanced at it. On it, a picture of a youth with jet black hair and deep blue eyes appeared. In the picture, he was seen wearing a casual set of clothes, walking in a busy shopping district. Glancing at Everblood, Angelica questioningly asked, "Who is this?" Smiling, Everblood didn't respond. Feeling her eyes close once more, she found herself back in the dark space. Scenes began to change, and before she knew it, feeling her eyes close one more time. Opening her eyes, Amanda found herself calmly staring at several demons coming at her from all directions. Moving his neck sideways, the hand of a demon brushed past his cheek. Chua. Feeling her body twist and catching a glimpse of the demon's solar plexus, Amanda felt Ren's body turn at a 45-degree angle as her elbow made contact with the demon. The latest understudies are on underfood.website. Bam. Connecting with the demon, a shockwave swept the surroundings. The demons that were heading her way came to a sudden stop. Caw. Falling to the ground, the demon spit out blood on the ground while he held onto his chest area. His face was filled with agony. Following a clicking sound, the demon died, and Amanda watched as Ren fought against the other demons. He was ruthless. His every action seemed flawless. Fighting against the demons, Amanda could only stare in a trace as he got rid of them with ease. Every single one of his actions seemed to be calculated and precise. No demon escaped his sights. Not long after, Amanda caught sight of Angelica in the distance. She seemed to be fighting against Kevin. Taking out the red book, Amanda felt her body move somewhere, and it was then that she placed a gargoyle statue facing a certain direction. What happened next was not within her realm of comprehension. Watching Angelica dash toward her with a bloodthirsty expression, Amanda realized that her body remained on the same spot throughout the entire time. It was only when Angelica's body was a couple of meters away from her that she felt her hand raise and her fingers snapped. For a split second, Angelica's body stopped moving. What happened next, Amanda couldn't understand. All she knew was that she heard a clicking sound and bright white light permeated the surroundings. By the time the light died down, Angelica was on the ground staring at her with stupefied eyes. Wow! Uncaring, Amanda felt her body stab right through Angelica's stomach area, extracting what seemed to be her core. After that, raising her hand, she swallowed the core, sending Angelica into a state of deep desperation. "Be my peace." Those were the last words that Amanda heard before she found herself back in the dark world. With her hand extended over the orb and staring at Angelica who was reflected in it, Amanda felt her mouth open. Done. Feeling a slight tug on her lips, Amanda felt her eyes deeply stare at the orb before her. "With you, I have finally found a way to damage his soul. All that remains is to wait and see the fruits of my labor slowly ripen." Ah! At that moment, the truth that she so wanted to deny finally struck her. Although Amanda desperately wanted to deny the truth, a piercing pain filled her heart at that moment. "Is this why you were always so hesitant?" The pain was so strong that everything that came after that vision felt like a blur to her. Each passing second that passed from that very moment felt like agony to her. "It can't be right. Tell me it's a lie." A figure stood in the middle of an empty void. He was currently unmoving and his head was lowered. An orb with black threads circling it appeared before him. Like snakes, the black threads encircled the orb, which was filled with cracks. Behind him was another figure. He looked exactly the same as him. The only difference was that hanging on his arms and legs were thick black chains. Moving closer to the figure, he broke the silence by speaking. "So, what do you think?" Chapter 596. How pathetic. Two words that deeply resonated inside Jin's mind. Staring at his figure, which was currently being held by the throat, Jin had mixed feelings about the situation. I was supposed to die this day. Having seen through Ren's memories, Jin was confused. Really confused. He didn't understand a single thing that he was shown. His mind had grown numb at one point, but he was helpless. He was forced to stare at the memories in spite of the fact that he didn't want to see them. It wasn't something that he could control. To make matters worse, he didn't want to relive this one scene which he tried his best to remove from his memories. Jin thought of this day as the most humiliating day of his life. Who would have thought that on this day he was supposed to die? Jin had relived all the different scenarios, and so he knew. He knew that he was supposed to have died. I didn't know that on that day Ren saved my life. He had mixed feelings about the whole situation. Slowly, Jin felt his eyes close, and before he knew it, he was back in the black space. In front of him was a white orb. With the palm of his hand pressing against it, Jin felt his body slowly move away from it. Opening his mouth, Jin heard Ren's voice coming out. This should settle the matter. Whether he matures through this ordeal or not is up to him. Since his death will inevitably result in Kevin possibly regressing, it is best to keep him alive. At least this way he will have a higher chance of surviving. Listening to those words, Jin remained silent. These last words were enough for him to understand everything. A bitter feeling arose within his heart. I was just a pawn, wasn't I? Melissa was a smart child. She knew this, and everyone around her knew this. It wasn't something that needed to be told to others. Her comprehensive abilities were something one would be envious of. With just a glance, she would be able to analyze and deduce a situation. It seemed as though nothing was out of her mind's grasp. At least that was how things were supposed to be. I don't get it. I don't understand. What's going on? Nothing made sense to her at the moment. It wasn't too long ago that she was exposed to her life's memories. Being reminded of her failures sent Melissa into a numb state. By the time she had recovered a bit, she found herself inside of another space, and it was then that she caught a glimpse of Ren's memories. Visit for the best no_underscore_underfruit_underfingy experience. In that moment, Melissa's mind blanked as all sorts of memories started replaying in her head. Rin went through a lot during that time. No, rather, a lot of would be an understatement. She watched him go through what seemed to be hell. Going through what he experienced, her heart quivered. The same was for her mind, which numbed considerably. Everything felt dull, especially when scenes of her and Rin appeared. So all of the previous theories that Rin gave to me were things that I had created? She originally did find it strange that Rin knew so many different theories, but it was only after she watched what was presented in front of her that she realized that all the theories he had given her, including the Magic Theory Project, they are all things that I came up with. At least that was what she figured out from what she was being shown. She still understood nothing, but at the same time had an inkling of what was going on. Ha ha. She let out a hollow laugh. I guess things make more sense now. That's me. Reflected in the white orb was the image of a young girl lying down in a pool of red blood. Emma was able to instantly recognize the figure and the environment. It was her on one of the battle platforms in Isanor. Her hand was pressed on the orb and thin black threads revolved around it. Maybe this will give her a wake-up call. Opening her mouth, Ren's words echoed out. His eyes locked on the figure that was in the middle of the platform, bleeding out. I originally intended to kill you. Emma didn't say anything while she listened to his words. Kevin relies too much on you and you rely too much on him. If you die, then maybe Kevin will get his act together, but at the same time I know that this won't work. Every single one of the words that Rin spoke deeply resonated inside Emma's heart as she just quietly watched everything unfold. His words, they hurt Emma deeply. His words felt like sharp knives that were stabbing straight through her heart. It wasn't so much about the words he said. It was more about one fact. So I'll just use you to make Kevin stronger. Hopefully you'll mature and you'll stop being a burden. I know. Truth sometimes hurts. Ha. I want to die. I want to die. I want to die. Ren's words echoed throughout the dark space. Reflected on the orb was the image of himself cutting his own face with what seemed to be a sharp knife. His whole body was covered in blisters and his body was shaking uncontrollably. The latest episodes are on underfood.website. Amanda's heart gripped with anxiety when she saw the scene. His words. The look of desperation on his face shook her to the core. All the previous thoughts she had in her mind vanished on the spot. It's not his fault. He's the true victim. It was at that moment that she realized something. The Rin in the orb was the true victim. Her heart was currently messed up and so was her mind. What she saw, she didn't think that she would ever be able to truly get over, but if there was one thing she understood while she stared at Rin, who was currently screaming in pain and threatening to kill himself, it was that he was the true victim of everything. Having every single aspect of your life controlled, from emotions to decisions, Amanda was able to clearly understand just how much Rin went through, and she felt her heart grip. I don't want to live, but I really want to go home. Ren's weak voice echoed once more. Amanda felt her heart tighten once more. I don't want to watch this anymore. His desperate calls, his cries, and the way that he was suffering. Amanda couldn't bring herself to watch anymore. Unfortunately, she didn't have much of a choice. Regardless of what she did, she was stuck watching everything. Please, Esto. Halfway through her sentence, she felt her mouth open. Ren's lonely voice echoed throughout the space. I also want to die. So, what do you think? The chained figure asked as he moved behind Ren. What followed after his words was a twisted silence. What are your plans? Instead of answering the chained figure, Ren asked him a question. Currently, his expression was dull, making it hard to see what he was feeling. My plans. Closing his mouth, the chained figure stared at the white orb in front of Ren. Silence enshrouded the surroundings as neither of the two figures in the dark space spoke. Are you going to take over my body? Breaking the silence was Ren's voice that echoed out loud. Turning his head to stare at Ren, the chained figure merely tilted his head. Are you not angry? Rather than answering, he asked a different question. I must say, I'm surprised that you aren't acting out after having seen everything. Mad. A bitter smile spread across Ren's face. After turning his body, his eyes met those of the chained figure. Something flashed across his eyes. Rather than being angry, I pity you. From the very beginning, I had already had an idea of what was going on. The clues were there. I was already prepared for everything that was to come. Still, Visit for the best no_underscore_underfruit_underfingy experience. Raising his hand, Ren clenched onto his chest. There was a faint tremble in his voice. To be honest, I don't really know how to feel about this. Lowering his head, Ren's voice turned into a whisper. My life has been merely an expression of your desire to end the loop. I feel like I've been living a lie my whole life, no? Ren shook his head. The bitterness in his voice only grew, and so did the pain in his chest. Let's be honest. My life is a lie. Listening to his words, the chained figure didn't speak for quite a while. It was only after a couple of seconds passed that he finally spoke. Not necessarily. The chained figure spoke. A lot of the things that you were subjected to were under my guidance, but there were several instances when things did not go the way I planned them. Remember when you returned back to the lock? Back then you truly did surprise me. The original plan was to alienate you from society with the revelations of your past, but you seem to have somehow managed to deduce everything and somehow stopped it. On top of that, you were also able to figure out that I couldn't read your thoughts. That in itself is praiseworthy. Once his words faded, he no longer said anything else and just silently stared at Ren, who was slowly starting to lose his composure, and his previous dull look crumbled. I don't really know what to say. I only did what must have been done. The chained figure shook his head and turned to look at the white orb. Slowly, the cracks that were forming around it were expanding. A cracking sound echoed out. What followed after the first sound was the sound of another, and it wasn't long before the orb was covered with thin miniature crevices. Neither of the two figures in the dark space moved while this was happening. Opening his mouth again, Ren asked, "So what next? What do you plan on doing?" "Nothing." The chained figure responded while absent-mindedly gazing at the orb. "It's not time yet." The chained figure eventually spoke out loud, while turning his body to face away from the white orb. Overhearing his words, Ren turned around. "Time for what? You'll know soon enough." Taking a step forward, the rattling of the chains echoed out. Like. Ren turned around and stared at the distancing chained figure, which slowly raised its hand and snapped its fingers. "For now, let's break this illusion." With a snap of his fingers, the whole world started to crumble down. Chapter 597. All it took was a snap of his fingers to see the world around me shatter. Cracks appeared in the black void, and the pieces slowly fell to the ground, revealing a white background behind them. It was like broken glass. Gazing toward the breaking void, I turned to focus my attention on the other me that was standing not so far from where I was. In particular, my gaze fell toward the chains that were binding his body. A complicated look flashed across my eyes. What do I do now? I found myself questioning myself. With everything that I saw, I really found it hard. Hard to find the drive to move forward. Everything just felt so fake to me at the moment. As if everything that I knew before had now become something that was unfamiliar. Be it the people that I knew or reality itself. What do I do? I really didn't know. Cracks. Behind me, a muffled sound echoed. It was reminiscent of the sound of sand rubbing against a hard surface. Without needing to look, I knew that it was the white orb cracking behind me. Prick. Accompanying the cracking sound, I felt an unfamiliar energy enter every fiber of my body. It was slowly seeping into my body, making my muscles tremble. Feeling the power that was entering my body, my emotions numbed. How could they not? It felt as if a little part of me was fading with each crack in the core. I don't think have long. With every crack, I could feel my existence start to disappear. No, rather, I felt it merge with something else. It was most likely the other part of me. I wasn't exactly sure about how long it would take, but I had a feeling that it wouldn't take more than a couple of years. By then, would the current me still exist? I wasn't sure. I guess I've lived my purpose. I couldn't say that my life was the most fulfilling, but I was definitely happy with what I had. Added all together, I only existed for 4 years. 4 years. The thought suddenly made me laugh. It hurt. The laugh hurt. Grasping onto my chest, I raised my head and stared at the cracking void. The cracks fell and my eyes closed. Opening my eyes again, I found myself standing in the previous spot from before. Taking a look at everyone around me, I came to realize that all of them had also snapped out of it. Their complexions were rather pale, and they had a look filled with incredulity and shock. That was until they slowly turned their heads to gaze in my direction. be it Amanda, Kevin, Jean, Small Snake, and everyone else that was in the room. All of their eyes were directed toward my direction. A myriad of different emotions flashed across their faces while they gazed at me. Closing my eyes, I turned my head to stare away from them before reopening them. I couldn't bear their gazes. Despite only being brief, their gazes were devoid of animosity and hatred. It was all I needed. My eyes then landed on Magnus. He seems to have also been affected. At the moment he was sitting on his knees, staring blankly at the ground. A blank look covered his face as his mouth trembled and he whispered, Impossible. I took a step forward. In that exact moment, pressing my foot against the ground, the echo of my foot touching the ground rang in the air, and I caught a glimpse of several people flinching. My body was filled with a bitter feeling. I can't blame them. Their reaction, it wasn't something that was outside of my expectations. With everything that they saw, they were probably extremely scared of the other version of me. The one that they didn't know. It's me. For now. I spoke in a voice loud enough for everyone to hear. I was letting them know that I was still me and the other me had not taken over. Fortunately, my words seemed to have alleviated some of the cautions in the eyes of the others as their shoulders relaxed. Taking a deep breath, I continued to move toward where Magnus was. It didn't take long for me to reach him. Pausing in front of him, I lowered my head and gazed at him. He still had the same blank look on his face from before. Pausing in front of him, his whispers became more clear to me. It can't be. Ignoring his words, I reached out my hand and grasped his neck. Belief. An acceptance that something exists or is true, especially one without proof. That was the definition of belief. The latest studies are on website. Everyone had their own beliefs. Some believed in things that others didn't, and the same went for others. A primary source of belief was religion. The belief and worship of a superhuman controlling power, especially a personal god or gods. Many had a god that they worshipped and believed in. Magnus was one such person. His belief was in the demon king, Jezebeth. He was his god and the person he worshipped. His reverence was based on his belief that he was an omniscient and omnipotent being. All were under his control and he was undefeatable. There was nothing that could defeat him. Or at least that was what he thought. Images began to sink into Magnus' mind and his body shook. It can't be. He whispered in a tone filled with denial. He can't have been defeated. It's impossible. His whispers continued to echo throughout the room. There was a sense of loss in Magnus' eyes. Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. Those were the 5 stages of depression, and that was what Magnus was currently going through at the moment. Except for the fact that there was no 5th stage for him. Acceptance. By now this was impossible. It was impossible for Magnus to accept what he saw. The sight of his own belief, God, being defeated by someone else felt as if the world was collapsing around him. What he was currently feeling was akin to having their own existence denied. It was like receiving proof that the God whom he had been worshipping was actually not as invincible as he thought he was. Somewhat, he wasn't any different from Rin, who was also going through a similar state. The only difference, however, was the fact that Rin was able to accept reality, unlike Magnus. The memories, they must be fake. The only thing Magnus could go through at the moment was an endless cycle of denial. He was as desperately clinging onto that little hope that perhaps what he had seen was fake. Deep down, he knew that what he saw was real, but he couldn't accept it. Impossible. Tap. Right in front of him, he heard the sound of soft footsteps echoing. When Magnus raised his head, he was met with a set of deep blue eyes. Visit for the best no_fruit_shinji experience. A chill ran down Magnus' spine when their eyes met as he subconsciously moved back a bit. It was very subtle and almost no one caught sight of it, but this was a clear show of fear and Rin didn't miss it. You saw it, didn't you? He asked while opening his mouth and reaching out for the back of his neck. His body exerted a tremendous amount of pressure. In reality, the pressure wasn't anything too outstanding for someone of Magnus' rank. It was still powerful, but nothing that would have affected typically put Magnus in a difficult spot. The only problem was that Magnus was not in the right state of mind. At the moment, Magnus perceived the current Rin to be exactly like the figure in one of the visions. They didn't look exactly the same, but as their figures overlapped, Magnus felt terror rise from deep within his body. And, no. He reached his hand out and moved back. There was a clear look of terror in his eyes. Magnus was overwhelmed by Ren's hand reaching for his neck. It felt like a giant palm that was coming down from the sky, tearing everything that was in its way apart just to reach out for him. His body trembled even more. He wanted to put resistance, but every time he did, images of the scene in which Ren defeated Jezebeth replayed inside of his mind, and all thoughts of fighting back disappeared. There's no way I can fight against someone that can defeat His Majesty. That was all Magnus could think of at the moment. At the moment he was nothing but a shell of his former prideful self. His pride was completely shattered, and it didn't take long for Ren's hand to grasp his neck. Feeling his neck get tugged upwards, Magnus felt his head lift and he was forced to meet Ren's eyes. For a brief moment of time, neither one of them spoke as they stared at each other. It was only for a brief moment, but to Magnus, whose mind was currently a mess, it felt like an eternity had passed. Cold sweat dripped down his back and he swallowed a mouthful of saliva. He felt an impending sense of doom at the moment, but he couldn't muster any courage to do anything about it. He defeat His Majesty. I can't fight him. Goodbye. Crack. Those were the last words Magnus heard before he felt the back of his neck get pressed together and his core cracked. Just like that, a prince-ranked demon was defeated. He didn't even put an ounce of resistance. Swoosh. Scattering in the room was his body, which had turned into fine black powder. With his eyes lingering toward the powder for a good couple of seconds, Ren turned around. In that instant he once again felt everyone's gazes directed in his direction. Despite their different looks, none of them seemed to want to distance themselves from him at the moment. Nevertheless, there was this weird sense of estrangement lingering in the air. Breathing in the air, Ren felt weirdly suffocated by this weird sense. Right as he was about to open his mouth to say something, his expression changed and he looked toward the sky. Opening his mouth, he mumbled, "He's coming." Chapter 598. I've been used. Coming out of the dream, Angelica didn't know how to look at Ren at the moment. Realizing that she was merely someone that was purposely made to sign a contract with Ren with the purpose of damaging his soul, Angelica's emotions were in a state of disarray. In a way, she felt betrayed, and at the same time she didn't. From the very beginning she had known that there was something secret about him. From the way that he knew certain things and the fight he previously had with the Demon King not too long ago. She knew that he was hiding something. She just didn't know that it was this sort of secret. Who am I to judge? Angelica inwardly shook her head while she took her eyes away from him. In reality, she had also been using him. He was the reason for her outstanding growth, and that was why she decided to stay with him. She realized that it would be hypocritical of her to not admit this much. Nonetheless, she still couldn't get rid of the weird feeling that was taking over her body. It was really uncomfortable. It was at that moment that Angelica heard the soft echo of a footstep. Raising her head, she saw Ren appear in front of the demon responsible for all of this. At the moment, he seemed to have lost his soul as he mumbled to himself and continued to stare toward the ground. Looking at him, Angelica knew exactly how he felt. As a devout believer of the Demon King, Angelica knew that his world must have come crashing down on her when he saw Ren defeat him in one of his visions. His reaction made even more sense of the fact that he was from the Pride clan. With his pride now shattered, he was a husk of his former self. With just a squeeze of his hands, Angelica watched as Ren ended the life of a prince-ranked demon. Taking particular note of Ren's expression while he squeezed the demon's neck, Angelica began to lower her head. Blinking her eyes a couple of times and recalling the expression his face had while he squeezed the demon's neck, Angelica realized something. He's in pain. He's coming. I muttered while I stared at the distant ceiling. It wasn't very obvious, but I could feel Jezebeth's power coming my way. It wouldn't be long before he arrived here. The tightening of my heart was proof of that. Turning my head to look at the others, my eyes paused on Kevin. Our eyes met. Looking back at me, he had a rather complicated look on his face. Nevertheless, he nodded his head. He understood what my words meant. I can only bring 3 people with me. Bring Ryan and Small Snake with you. Okay. Our conversation probably didn't make sense to the others, but what I wanted at the moment was for Kevin to leave this place as fast as possible. The Demon King was about to come. He and the others weren't safe at the moment, and it was best if they left at the moment. The latest understudies are on underfiv.website. There was only one problem at the moment, and that was the fact that Kevin could only bring 3 people with him. It was something that both of us understood. It was a good thing that Kevin wasn't the only option we had available in order to leave this place. Further down, there should be a portal that we could use to make our escape. Nevertheless, it was best if Small Snake and Ryan left with Kevin first, since it would take time for us to reach the portals and activate them. Without them, it would make things more efficient for everyone. Make sure to tell me the coordinates of Earth before you leave. We'll be stuck here if you don't. Yes. Nodding his head, Kevin raised his palm to face the distance. His body began to take on a red hue. Wait. Just as more and more energy began to gather toward Kevin, someone spoke up. Turning my head, I spotted Small Snake moving in my direction. My heart unconsciously sped up when I met his gaze. I let out a sigh of relief not long after. The way he looked at me was no different from how he looked at me back in the past. Pausing a couple of steps in front of me, he spoke. Rin, wait a second. What is it? I asked while my brows furrowed. I know what you are planning to do, and I don't think sending Ryan and I first will be a good idea. How so? I curiously asked while raising my brow. Turning his head to stare at Ryan, who was behind Angelica, Small Snake sighed. Actually, if you're thinking of sending us away first because you think we're too weak, then it's the wrong decision. Calmly listening to Small Snake's words, I tried to understand what he was trying to say. At the moment, his words didn't particularly make sense. How was the decision of sending the 2 weakest people away the wrong decision? What I was doing was obviously for their sake. I need to hurry up. As I brushed my hair back, I felt the sense of doom gripping my heart increase. He's close. The sense of urgency increased while cold sweat dripped from the side of my face. Small Snake, we really don't have much time to discuss this. Just tell me what you want to say. Okay. With a solemn look on his face, Small Snake hurriedly nodded his head. As I mentioned, sending Ryan and I away isn't the best solution. If there is anyone that can connect the coordinates faster and fine-tune the portal, it is us. Rather than slowing you down, we will make everything faster. The frown on my face tightened after hearing his words. He has a point. I thought after a while, activating Eyes of Chronos to slow down time. Having been trained by Jomnuk and Henler, Small Snake and Ryan are probably very knowledgeable regarding this kind of stuff, and their assistance will certainly be of value. Visit for the best no_free experience. No, rather, their assistance will definitely be useful, and perhaps even save me a lot of valuable time. I deactivated Eyes of Chronos and looked at Small Snake. Alright, we'll do as you say. My decision was made within the span of a couple of seconds. Lifting my head and staring at the others who were all looking at me, I took a deep breath. Then, taking a step toward the exit of the room, I started to speak. All of you probably have a lot of questions for me, especially after what you've seen in the visions, but I've just figured it out myself. I'm just as clueless as all of you are. Sort of. Although I already had an idea of what was going on, I didn't know it was to this extent. It's not the right time to ask questions right now. Let's get out of this planet before we figure everything out. Cutting myself mid-sentence, I turned to look toward the entrance of the door, and it was there that I spotted a familiar figure. It was Han Yufei. He had a rather confused look on his face at the moment. Have you managed to get the dimensional spaces? I asked. In a moment of contemplation, Han Yufei turned his head and stared at the room before looking back at me. I have searched the lower levels and I have found no evidence of dimensional spaces being there. However, I have released several different prisoners, and they should now be attracting the attention of some of the demons that are standing guard below. Pausing his sight on the room and staring at our clothes and bodies, which were all roughed up, Han Yufei curiously asked. Been meaning to ask, did something happen while I was gone? This is problematic. Covering my chin to ponder, I no longer paid any attention to Han Yufei. The sudden revelation that he didn't have the dimensional spaces made my toes curl with anxiety. This is really bad. Should I just leave without my dimensional space? The search for dimensional spaces might end in my death, but at the same time, losing my dimensional space was almost like cutting my strength in half. There would be no way for me to end the loop or whatever was happening without my dimensional space. Either way, I was screwed. Scratching the side of my face in a rushed manner, I clenched my fists tightly and came up with a decision. Shit, I can't leave without my dimensional space. All my most important stuff is there. Without it, I'd be screwed. Quite literally screwed. Setting aside my sword, which was a progressively growing artifact, there were many other things inside of my dimensional space that I just couldn't get rid of. Their loss would result in my losing a considerable amount of power. I need to go get them. I made my decision within a split second. Han Yufei, do you have any idea where the dimensional space is located? Since he's searched all of the bottom levels, he must have gotten an idea. Yes. Han Yufei nodded his head. The dimensional spaces are located one floor above, right in the room above us. Since I've searched the whole place, I'm quite confident in my deduction. All right. Visit for a better user experience. I turned to face the exit without hesitation. Whether his words were true or not, I didn't have a choice at the moment. As I was pressed for time, I didn't have the luxury of pondering over everything. Once again turning to look at Kevin, I opened my mouth. Kevin, bring whoever you want back to Earth, the others follow Angelica. My eyes paused on her. If there was anyone that would know where the portal was located, it was her. Meeting my line of sight, Angelica wordlessly stared at me for a couple of seconds before grabbing Ryan's hands and nodding her head. Understood. Her soft voice reached my ears, prompting me to feel more relaxed. Cage. But that didn't last for long as I suddenly felt my hand twitch and pain engulf my body. Shit, it hurts. In that short moment when I killed Magnus, my strength soared up uncontrollably. However, it was only temporary. My current body was still too weak to handle all of his powers. Nevertheless, I could take consolation in the fact that my current body could withstand the power more easily than before. In fact, though I wasn't exactly sure, I think I may have already broken to rank. Normally, I would have been happy with this piece of news, but at the moment I think I may have lost such emotion. With everything that had happened to me, happiness was no longer something that I could find. I can't waste any more time. Taking my attention away from my strength, I proceeded to make my way out of the room. As I was about to leave, a hand pressed against my shoulder. Wait. A soft and crisp voice echoed through my ear. I didn't need to look to understand who the voice belonged. My heart tightened. Yes. I asked while hiding the expression on my face. We need to talk. Later, there isn't time for us to talk. The Demon King could come any minute now. There was no time to talk. I'm going to go and get a couple of things for. I'll come with you then. My brows furrowed when I heard her words. Turning around, and just as I was about to reject her, my facial features froze. Blankly staring into her eyes and pursing my lips, I nodded my head. All right, come with me. Thank you. She softly whispered while tugging at the edge of my shirt. Closing my eyes once, I turned around and left the room. Chapter 599. Thump, thump. 2 arrows fired from Amanda's bow and impaled 2 demons in the head, killing them instantly. Lowering her bow, Amanda continued to silently follow Ren from behind. A complicated look spread across her face. I have to do this. The urgency in Ren's eyes told Amanda that the situation was very likely extremely serious and that now would not be the best time to speak with him. But Amanda also understood Ren really well. And knowing exactly how he was feeling at the moment, Amanda clearly understood that Ren had some ideas about possibly leaving the others behind and going on his own somewhere. Though she wasn't exactly sure if her deduction was correct, she thought this was a very real possibility, which was why she wanted to speak with him now rather than later. Nonetheless, she still held herself back from talking at the moment. She would only do it when they arrived at their destination. We're here. It didn't take long for Ren's footsteps to halt as he stopped in front of a large door. Lowering her bow and walking next to him, Amanda scanned the doors. The door was about 8 meters in height and seemed to be made out of some sort of heavy metal alloy. There were carvings on the front of the door depicting some strange symbols and runes. They seemed rather foreign to her. This is most likely where the Duke-ranked demon rested. Ren's voice reached Amanda's ears. Putting his hand against the door and closing his eyes, silence enshrouded the surroundings. A white hue began to spring out of his body, making Amanda shudder. He's gotten stronger. This was her initial thought as she felt his power. She wasn't exactly certain, but it seemed to her that Ren had broken through. Again. Bam. In the hall they were in, a loud banging sound along with the quaking of the door startled Amanda out of her thoughts. Amanda's sight was obscured by dust rising from the ground. As Amanda regained awareness of what was happening, she saw Ren standing in the same spot she had seen earlier. A low murmur escaped his lips as his brows furrowed tight. It's tougher than I thought. Once again raising, he placed it on the door. As he pressed his hand against the door, the white hue that was emanating from his body became even more fierce, and another loud noise echoed. Bang! This time he seemed to have exerted even more power as the halls shook with even more force, sending Amanda off balance. Fortunately, she was quick to recover and used her bow to keep herself balanced. That was close. A secret thought crossed her mind as she slowly stood up. Returning her attention to Rin, she watched the door slowly fall towards the ground, causing another loud noise. Bang! Let's go. The latest understudies are on website. Without waiting for Amanda, Rin rushed into the room. Amanda followed him from behind. So you've made a friend. I'm happy for you, Brian. Laying down on a clean white bed, a middle-aged lady held the hand of a youth who was looking at her with a thin smile on his face. Yes, Mom, I've been doing well, so you don't have to worry about me. As you can see, I've been able to afford your hospital bills, and the doctors said that you will have no trouble recuperating from your illness. Bending down on one knee to the ground, Brian brought her hand toward his forehead as he whispered, "You'll finally be cured." A smile spread across the woman's face as she heard her son's words. "I'm really glad that you're happy." Clank. Suddenly, the doors of the room unlocked and a devilishly handsome figure entered the room as the son and mother were enjoying a heartwarming moment. He held a bouquet of flowers in his right hand. Right as he entered the room, his footsteps came to a halt. "Looks like I'm disturbing something important." Jolting Brian out of his moment, he raised his head and glared in Hemlock's direction. "What are you doing here?" "What? Didn't you tell me that I could visit?" Taking off his long brown coat, the figure sat down on the sofa opposite Brian and his mother. "All right." Recalling something, he got off his seat and moved to where Brian's mother was resting. Extending his hand, he gently placed the flowers next to Brian's mom and gently smiled. "Nice to meet you, ma'am. I'm Brian's colleague. I hope you don't mind my presence." "Oh my." With a sweet smile on her face, Brian's mother grabbed the flowers and placed them beside her. Turning to look at Brian, her smile became even sweeter. With a teasing tone, she spoke. "Why didn't you tell me that your friend was this handsome?" "Why would that matter?" "It of course matters." She protested, crossing her arms together. "I haven't been able to go out for quite a while now, and I need something to entertain my eyes." "Well, you can look at me for however long you want, ma'am." "Shut up. Brian, don't take this away from me." "Mom." In between glaring at his mother and Hemlock, Brian rolled his eyes at Hemlock one more time before standing up and deciding to bid her goodbye. "I think it's time for me to go. I'll contact you later, Mom. For now, it looks like I will need to go to work. Visit for a better user experience." "Sure thing." Aware of Brian's circumstances, Brian's mother waved goodbye to him and his friend. "Have a good day at work, the two of you. I hope everything goes well." "Thank you, ma'am. Your words are really encouraging me to work, "Shut up." "Hey." Unable to stand Hemlock's look, Brian grabbed him by the shoulder and dragged him out of the room. Closing the door behind him, Brian glared at Hemlock. "What do you think you're doing? Visiting a friend's mother?" "No, I get that, but what's with you flirting with my mother?" "But I wasn't." You don't call that flirting?" "Indeed, I was just socializing. Something you don't seem to be able to do." Turning around, the smile on Hemlock's face slowly faded. "Let's not talk about that for now. We've got something important to do today." Brian's face similarly turned serious upon hearing those words. "How's the pay?" "Excellent. I'm in." "I know." Hemlock looked at Brian and shook his head. Hemlock knew he could count on Brian to participate as long as the pay was good. He was just like that. "Oh right, I almost forgot. It's supposed to be an undercover mission, so you must use a nickname." That sounds bothersome." "It's orders." "All right then." With a shrug of his shoulders, Brian thought for a moment before mumbling to himself. "A nickname, what should I use?" Turning his head to face Hemlock's direction, he asked. "Have you thought of something?" "I have." "Oh. What is it?" Turning his head to face Brain, Hemlock smiled before he muttered. "Malik al-Shayatin. Small snake. Small snake. Small snake. Huh. Ah." A pat on the shoulder jolted Small Snake out of his thoughts, and he turned to look at Ryan. "Are you okay?" he asked. There were notable hints of worry in his voice as he looked at him. Taking note of this, Small Snake smiled. I'm fine. When he turned his head to look at the others, he pressed his hand against the wall and the mana in the air began to warp. I'm done. He watched as the air began to swirl with mana as the portal next to him started to activate. The mana in the air became thicker with each passing second. It was slowly starting to become more difficult for Small Snake to breathe. It didn't take long for the portal to fully form, about 2 minutes. Watching the portal fully form, Small Snake turned to gaze into the distance. He still hasn't come back yet. While he was worried, Small Snake knew Ren was a capable individual, so turning to face Ryan and the others, he began to speak. You guys go in first, I'll hold up the portal for now. Because the portal needed someone to keep it functioning, Small Snake had no choice but to wait for Ren to arrive before he could leave. Lowering his head, he looked at Ryan. Ryan, since you're the weakest, you will enter first and the others will follow his example after, understood? Okay. Though reluctant, Ryan nodded his head and proceeded to head for the portal. Looking at him from behind were Angelica and the others with the exception of Rin, Amanda, Kevin, Melissa and Emma. Setting Amanda and Rin aside, the other three were busy destroying the core. Small Snake. Once again jolting Small Snake out of his thoughts was Ryan's voice. With his head turned and looking in his direction, Ryan looked at Small Snake and softly mumbled. Don't stay too long. Don't worry. A smile spread across Small Snake's mouth as he felt touched by Ryan's concern. I'll come back as soon as Rin comes back, okay? Okay. Ryan nodded his head, finally feeling a little relieved. Then turning his head, he directly entered the portal and disappeared. Once his figure completely disappeared, Small Snake turned to look at the others. Alright, next. Chapter 600. Like, a dull metallic sound reverberated throughout the air. Kevin clenched his teeth and swung his sword with everything he had as he beat the white core in front of him. Though his mind was a mess at the moment, he continued to strike with everything he had as he realized that the situation was serious. Things don't make sense. Why is Rin the only one that is remembering his memories of each regression while I don't? Like, he struck the white core with his sword once more. There is definitely something that I'm missing, and I feel like I'll get my answer right after destroying this core and finishing the mission. Like, Kevin had an inkling that the next synchronization would make things much clearer for him, though it was only a gut feeling at the moment. He just knew. Let me help. Beside him, Emma took out her short swords and similarly started to hack at the white orb. Like, hitting the white core, the sound it emitted was a lot crispier than his as it rang in the air for a longer period of time. Put more force into it. Kevin murmured while he took a glance at Emma, who took a couple of steps back as a result of the recoil from the first attack. It's a lot tougher than I anticipated. She murmured in embarrassment before returning to Kevin and hacking at the white core with her short swords. While the two continued to attack the core, it wasn't long before fine miniature crevices and cracks started to form around it. We're almost there. Emma's eyes lit up when she saw cracks appear on the core. The two of them had been at it for more than 10 minutes, and thus she was rightfully excited. The core, or whatever the thing was, it was extremely durable. More than they had originally anticipated. Yes. We're almost there. Nodding his head, Kevin continued to slash with all of his power. He never lost focus once. With each passing second, the sense of doom engulfing his body became more intense, prompting him to attack with even more force. The cracks on the core only served to make him want to attack it at an even faster speed. Buff, thump, buff, thump. The sound of his heartbeat accompanied the sound of his sword smashing against the core. He could feel it and hear it inside of his mind. With each second that passed, the faster his heart sped up and the more anxiety Kevin felt. He's coming. That was because he knew. He knew that death itself was coming. Unless he did something to the core now, the only thing that would await him was certain death in the future. Crack. More and more cracks began to appear on the core while he and Emma continued to hack at the core, and the more hurried their breathing became. We're almost there. Just a bit more. Crack. In no time, pieces of the core began to fall to the side as the core slowly split. The scene was strangely reminiscent of a flower bloom. It was a beautiful sight to watch. The eyes of everyone present lit up at the sight, especially Kevin, who turned to face Emma and ordered. Emma, continue doing whatever you're doing, I'm about to open the portal. His hand raised in the air, and a red hue erupted from his body, engulfing the room. Thank God I remembered about the core. He had originally planned on leaving right as Rin left, but after realizing that the core was still intact, he took it upon himself to finish the job he was tasked to do. After all, the delay of the Demon King by 1 extra year was an extremely important goal. Crash. An audible glass-shattering noise followed, startling Kevin out of his thoughts. A smile soon formed on his face. She did it. That was because he knew. He knew that the core had finally shattered. Bang! With a thunderous crash, the door came crashing down vertically toward the ground and a large room appeared in Amanda's vision. Following Rin from behind, Amanda entered the room. The room was about the size of a tennis court, neither too large nor too small. In the room, there were a number of decorations, of which there was a big desk as well as a number of bookshelves and several statues. The decorations themselves didn't evoke any strong emotions in Amanda, but when she noticed the room's black walls and the golden chandelier that hung from the room's ceiling and softly lit the space, she began to feel a spooky, even menacing sense envelop her. She didn't particularly feel comfortable in the room. Where is it? Rin immediately began looking through the desk after entering the room. Looking at him from behind, Amanda didn't say anything and looked elsewhere. She was planning on helping him look for the dimensional spaces. 4 hands were better than 2. Click. Opening one of the drawers, Amanda carefully looked at what was inside. Picking up an item that closely resembled a skull, she carefully placed it back and closed the drawer back. Taking out a napkin from her dimensional space, she cleaned her hands before she turned to look at Ren. Your dimensional space is in the form of a bracelet, right? Yes. Rin replied while he looked through one of the desk drawers. His complexion was extremely somber and serious. The look of urgency in his eyes was clear for Amanda to see, dispelling any thoughts of bringing the topic up right now. It's a black bracelet that can easily twist like leather ones. In fact, it is made to look like a leather bracelet. It's also not that thick, about the width of a small ruler. I see. Taking a closer look at the room, Amanda nodded to herself as she searched for anything that matched Ren's description. She looked through drawers, books, carpets, sofas, and whichever area she thought was possible, but as she continued to look, she was only left disappointed with the outcome. Not here too. Neatly placing one of the pillows on the sofa, Amanda tilted her head slightly before adjusting it properly. It was only after she was satisfied with the positioning that she felt her hand stop twitching. Phew. Letting out a sigh of relief, she looked behind her to see what Ren was up to. I think I found them. And it was right at the exact moment that she turned around that she saw Ren taking out what seemed to be a couple of small black rings. Tapping onto them, Ren's eyes opened a little. This should be Jin's. He mumbled out loud, prompting Amanda to drop whatever she was doing. There's no need to look anymore. Walking up to Ren, she asked, Are you sure that it's the one? Yes. Ren nodded while he quickly scanned the ring in his hand. Once he was confident that it was indeed Jin's, he stood up and looked through the other drawers. What are you doing? Amanda asked, confused by his actions. Since he found the dimensional space, shouldn't he be leaving? I'm still looking for mine. It wasn't with the others. Right. Finally understanding what Ren was doing, silence enveloped the surroundings as neither of the two spoke. The only sound that could be heard was the sound of Ren sliding the drawers of the desk. A complicated look appeared on Amanda's face as she took a look at him. In the end, unable to hold herself back anymore, she blurted her thoughts out. Are you planning on leaving again right after we return? Ren's hand froze for a short second. His face, which was previously expressionless, hardened. Sliding the drawer open and taking out what seemed to be a ring, he calmly replied. What made you think that I'd be leaving? Just a hunch. Oh. Ren absent-mindedly nodded his head. Amanda's eyes squinted at his half-hearted reply. Although she wanted to say something, taking note of Ren's expression, she decided not to say anything and started helping him look through the desk. She could clearly see from his expression that there was something he was worried about. Nevertheless, she also understood that the priority right now was looking for his items. While Amanda walked next to him and helped him look through the items, raising his head slightly and meeting her eyes, he lowered his head again and pursed his lips. While he was looking through the items, he softly whispered something. It's best if you give up on me. Amanda's hand came to a sudden stop. Her heart sank when she heard his voice, in spite of it being very soft. Taking a step back, Amanda felt her body turn cold. Despite that, she maintained her calm. What are you saying? I think I've made myself clear the first time? Rin said as his voice turned cold. Amanda experienced a sudden sharp pain in her chest as a result of his sudden change in tone. Is it because of the memories? Are you afraid that I'm not going to? It's not that. Rin cut Amanda off in a loud voice. Amanda immediately shut her mouth at his outburst. The pain in her chest only intensified. With both hands pressed against the desk, Rin lowered his head and whispered. It's not because of that, it's really not. Moving a couple of items around, Ren's expression crumbled a little. Then, taking a look at Amanda from the corner of his eyes, his face softened a little before he murmured. The reason why I'm telling you to give up on me is because I don't have long left to live. A soft sound escaped from Amanda's lips as she stared at Rin with her eyes wide open. At this moment, to her, it felt as though the world around her was crumbling apart. Her body didn't even shake. Staring at Rin, she was in a state of total paralysis, unable to comprehend his words. You've seen the figure inside of my memories, haven't you? The only thing she could hear while in her state was Ren's frail words. It shouldn't come as a surprise. He's the real me. I'm just a byproduct of his desire to end the loop and kill the Demon King. I'm not someone that was meant to exist in the first place. Amanda's eyes slowly began to blink in response to the words he spoke. She was slowly coming out of her state of shock. It is faint, but I can feel it. I'm slowly getting devoured by him. I don't know how much time I have left, but I would say a couple of years at best. A bitter and hollow laugh escaped Ren's lips. If you think about it, my existence only really amounts to 4 years. To dissap. As she leaned closer to Ren, she did not hesitate to take action. Turning his body around, her lips pressed against his and she interrupted him mid-sentence. Amanda felt a jolting concoction of emotions run through her body as her lips touched his. It was a hard feeling to describe, but to her, it felt as though a million different emotions burst at once. Unfortunately, the sensation was only short-lived. Fully understanding that they were pressed for time, Amanda quietly backed off. I won't make the same mistake again. Amanda quietly murmured while she looked at Ren. You expect me to forget all about you and just move on after everything that happened because you are going to disappear soon? Feelings didn't work like that. They weren't something that could be discarded as one wished. If there's one thing that I learned from what happened to my father is that anything can happen when you least expect it. After everything that you've been through and all the times you've almost died or gone away to somewhere dangerous, did you seriously think that I wouldn't know the risk of liking someone like you? Amanda's voice was soft yet powerful at the same time. All of Amanda's feelings came pouring out at this moment as she stared at Run, who was standing opposite her. If you only have a couple of years left to live, then it only gives me more reason to stay with Y. Opening her mouth again, she stopped herself mid-sentence. Staring at Ren, who was looking back at her, she lowered her head. I've spoken too much. Turning around, a sad smile spread across her face. It's best if I leave. I'm taking too much of your time. Without waiting for Ren to say anything, Amanda took a step forward and left the room, leaving Ren behind. Once she left the room, turning around a corner, her feet came to a pause. Pressing her back against the wall, her body suddenly started to tremble. The corner of Amanda's eyes began to water as she slid down the wall. It was only after she was no longer in Ren's sight that her calm facade crumbled and all her pent-up emotions came out. Regardless of how strong she was, the news of Ren's inevitable death made her heart feel as though it had been shredded into millions of pieces. Mumbling something, her lips trembled. I can't. Her body continued to tremble as she clutched her chest, and tears began to pour down the side of her cheeks. Why did things turn out this way?